Welcome to Watching Football Week with your host, one half of that dynamic duo,
Let's go.
Sean Spencer, and South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer.
Don't play us if you're undefeated.
Where we celebrate past success while looking to a bright future. There's a youth movement in Washington, and they're ready to take the reins, led by a fire. It's a new day, new dawn, no longer the laughing stock. It's time to take command.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy, Sean Spencer, one half of that dynamic duo that is Let's Talk Football. And you know what day it is. You know what day it is. It's Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. And that means I'm with my guy. I'm with my guy, South Carolina's finest, Will Kramer. What up, Will?
Oh, man. You know, watching that intro, it just reminds me of August and all the hype and hope that we had with the agenda for today's show. And it's like, oh, man, how long ago that was.
Oh, my goodness.
But I'm excited to be here to talk to you. Very excited that we get to get back on after the bye week and you know, just keep talking about what's next to come.
Yeah. I think we both kind of resigned to next season and this off season, and you know, and anything in football right now is just kind of secondary. We're looking towards the future and looking towards see what happens next. And we're in December. Will, it's getting a little chilly.
Yes.
How you doing in South Carolina? You guys all right?
It's cold in the mornings. It's cold. I don't like it.
Well,
I don't.
Under 30s or under
Yeah, in the 30s. Yeah, I mean, we've got frost on the ground. Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, this is normally like January. This is more like February. Not January weather. Yeah, not because February starts to warm up. So, like, yeah, winter's coming, man. We're going to get hit with something this year. It may not be snow, but we're going to get hit with cold temperatures. I'm not thrilled
absolutely.
right now. All right, I'm
I know
I've already lost my summer tan here.
Right. Yo, so how did that affect it was your boy's birthday. Your youngest, he had his second birthday, didn't he?
He did. Yeah. So last week we kept it low key. He turned 2 on Friday. He got to have his favorite, you know, pizza and stuff like that. We had some mac and cheese the next night. But this Saturday we're gonna do a just a little get together at the park with a couple of his classmates. My parents are coming into town. They have their Christmas program on Friday. So yeah, it's gonna be a whole shindig, a whole little fun weekend of play.
Oh, I love that. One after the other and after the other. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yep.
You're gonna be tired after that one, but it's gonna be all good.
Yes, we will.
Yo, but ladies and gentlemen, you know why you're here. Welcome to Washington Football Weekly. It's been a while, but we are back and ready to look forward to the end of the season and into the off season. And today, we're not in the playoff hunt. We're in last place in the NFC East at 4-9. The New York Giants somehow found the GOAT in Mr. DeVito. You're right. I mean, the mob, the Italian mafia's got.
Oh my gosh, it's nuts! They're chicken cutlets for everybody.
I'm telling you, it's craziness. But we are in last place. We see the race and everything else that's going on in the league. So we're looking towards the offseason. And we're also looking at how did we get to this place? Because normally at this time of the year, what's your favorite phrase? A December to remember, you know? And this is none of this is we want to remember. And it's all we got to put it on somebody. And at the end of the day, Dan Snyder is no longer with us. falls on the Rivera Error.
Mm-hmm.
A little play on words. Will, go ahead, man. Talk to us.
Yeah. No, so I was listening to Beltway Football, the podcast with JP Finley, and they had Tressway on, and they were asking, what are you doing during this bye week and stuff? And he said, he goes, in Ron's time, because Tressway is one of the last remaining Redskins. And he's like, we've had a couple seasons before where, you hit Thanksgiving and things kind of bottom out and whatnot. He's like, but since Ron got here, we haven't. We've had 3 straight years of we come back from Thanksgiving and we're in the hunt. We're fighting for this. He goes, right. And you forget this feeling. He goes, it's rough. He goes, I'm going to be honest. He goes, it's really rough right now to finish out this season. It's hard to stay motivated. He's like, he goes, you miss that excitement of playing for something. Yeah. And we feel that as teams, as fans. And that's why I say, like, all I'm looking for right now, my bar is very low. I'm just looking for to still be in contention around Thanksgiving, so we can have that December to remember where games are worth, getting emotionally tied up over.
Yep.
But we're not there. And the worst part with this going to 17 games, this stretches into the first week of January. We're still keep going on this.
Oh God. Yeah. It just seems like it just keeps going and going. And it gets to the point now where it's like, you're just like, what do you get amped up for? Right. I mean, even just as a fan, but as a player, like you already kind of see the writing on the wall. We've talked about it countless times, how they're going to clean house. And we're going to discuss that, a little bit today, but what do you get amped up for? And as you saw, you sent me something not too long ago. Danny Johnson's released. Now, that might not look like a major thing to some people, but we know this guy's a gamer. He plays. He's not the best, but he still produces. And our secondary has definitely been a question. So it's frustrating, man.
Yeah. I mean, that guy is a yo-yo. And then you got to feel bad for him because they're just like, you're on the roster, you're off. You're on the roster, you're off. They just, you're active, you're inactive. You're active, you're inactive. It's like they just don't give this guy a full chance, it seems like. I do know the guy they brought in, this Blue Kelly. I think his name, something like that, from he was drafted by the Ravens this year. He's been cut by 3 teams already. So right there, that kind of lets you know what are they seeing. He's a bigger bodied corner. He's the guys we like there. He's more than 6 foot. He's long wingspan. So I like that. But at this point, it's like, I guess they'll let Danny sign with maybe a playoff contender so he can enjoy himself. He's a solid player, like you said.
Right.
He can help a team out.
Oh yeah, as we've seen with players that have left us, number one that comes to my mind is Ryan Clark, who's had that great career with the Steelers and now is in NFL Network and all that stuff. But Montez Sweat is living up to expectations in Chicago, really kind of giving that defense a resurgence, man.
Yeah. Shout out to Jack Niedermeyer. I hope you're eating crow right now when you said he's not worth $100 million. You remember that a couple weeks ago on our show? And Jack's like, you don't pay this guy. He's not a franchise. He's not wrong. But Montez is playing really, really well. And I mean, we did know that the team did not want to get rid of Montez. And then they got an offer. They made an offer they couldn't refuse. And it gives him a chance to reset. But so shout out to Montez. Good for him. He doesn't need to be saying the comments that he did. Don't need to be hearing that. Glad to see that he is playing well. He's a good player.
He took a shot at us in the comments. He definitely go check that out.
I wanted to talk to you about that. Yeah. I wanted to talk to you. You know what? So I thought about this. So he may be confusing himself with the rest of the team. That's all I'm going to say. Let's not remember. So Montez was going into a free agency year. Okay. Yeah. And by the time he got traded, we were still competitive, but we were struggling. And he may be sitting there saying, I got to make some business decisions because I can't be hurt going into the time I want to get paid. So he may have been waiting for the end of the season. I don't know if all the players have. I'm just coming up with just pure speculation. This is also the guy who said he was going to break the sack record with Chase Young, and I don't think they even got 10 sacks that year combined. So sometimes his sense of reality is a little distorted. He also wouldn't get the vaccine when his coach was recovering from cancers.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
Look,
That's just historical.
What up, Nathan? Say
Nathan.
it's time, man. How you doing, buddy?
I'll get ready, Nathan.
Look,
We're doing some historical timelines here tonight. So get ready.
Yes. So look, let's go into it. I know you're excited. People, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you could see the notes that my guy has typed up. I was like, wait a minute. Yes, this is the detail. I love it. Look, we got to talk about it. And it's funny when you look at that intro, because I say we have a fiery coach, and we have that snapshot of him from I think that was a Seattle game, let's effing go, yada, yada, in the locker room. We are all we need and everything like that. Unfortunately, it seems like that was few and far between. So many other things happened where he was, involved in player personnel and getting different guys here and there. There's so many things, but I'm not gonna keep talking. I'm gonna let you go. He's been here 4 years, one NFC East championship, one playoff berth in the hunt a couple years, but always slow starts and struggling a lot. What are your thoughts, man? Talk to us.
Yeah. So, 4 years ago, we hired Ron Rivera as head coach of the Redskins. And everyone was pretty excited around here because he was a quality head coach. You knew he would be a stand-up person, a stand-up leader of the organization. He was given responsibility in a coach-centric approach where he is the final say on personnel, which was, really big deal. And there was a lot of optimism in Washington when Ron got hired in 2019. And he throughout his time, he had some moments where the team was, really, projecting up, and we would have off seasons and start of August that we were very excited. You're always going to be excited in August for your team, but we would go into the season just really, really excited, and we were kind of trending in the right direction. And then at one point, things have fallen apart to the point where we're 4-9. He's had to fire. He had to replace his offensive coordinator in the offseason. He's fired his defensive coordinator and friend, Jack Del Rio. And at this point, the writing's on the wall. We know there's going to be a clean house in just 4 short weeks. On January 8th, everyone will have packed up their bags, and Commanders Park is going to be a very, very deserted place because everyone's going to have their offices cleaned out, and we're bringing in new. And so I really wanted to take a look at how did we get here? How did we have moments where Ron was fired up and we are competitive in December to remember, and we're excited about players, to where this has been a really, really difficult season. And so I've kind of gone through some things, and we're just going to kind of chat about it.
Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely. And look, and this is hard for me, especially because Ron's a rah-rah guy, at least in some of these videos. And in-house, they always seem to talk about his players, always revere him as he's a player's coach. He's a great guy. He's somebody I'd run through a wall for you, I think was a comment Reeves made after he got to the Pro Bowl last year. He seems like somebody that's just a genuinely good, upstanding guy. We know that about him. We know the history, the lore, folklore, being on that 85 Bears team, and the things he's able to do. And he is one of the only coaches that has taken now multiple teams, but at the point before he came to us, he had taken the Panthers to the playoffs with a losing record when they went 7-8-1. And then obviously you have that 15-1 year where they literally were dominating everybody with Cam Newton at QB and Luke Kuechly and Josh Norman, those guys. And you really kind of look at that. So when he came here, that was our thought, like, hey, okay, he has this. He has he has his talent. He's been to Super Bowl. He knows he has the pedigree. And at that time, coming from the Zorns and the Jay Grudens and all that, we hadn't had coaches since a Marty Schottenheimer. And even that was not Super Bowl talent. That's playoff caliber.
Right.
But we hadn't had coaches like that. So bringing him in was exciting, and you hope that he would have been able to replicate that. And it never came to fruition, man.
Right. I know. But we also have to recognize Ron dealt with some serious stuff
Absolutely.
Now, I think when his time is over here in a couple weeks and he eventually does some interviews, he's going to say this was even more challenging than he thought. And he knew it was going to be challenging. He knew this was not an easy job to come to, which is why he was able to get that coach-centric approach, being the final authority. So this was his chance to really say, I'm going to put my stamp. I'm an upstanding human being, and I'm going to clean this franchise up because it needs it. And he has succeeded in that. The problem is he's a coach, he's personnel, and so when you're going 4-9, you got to look at where did it happen, where did you go wrong, and there started to become some patterns as to how did we get to this spot.
Yeah. And it's frustrating. So Will, talk to us about how we did get to the spot from being that optimistic, team going in, Chase Young coming in. We feel like we're on the upswing. He's bringing motivation to us to the point where we are now, where it's just like, oh, the game is on. So is the So is the Golden Bachelor. Let me watch that instead.
Yeah.
How do we get here, man?
Yeah, I don't know about you. I don't really watch the Golden Bachelor, so I don't choose to do that.
I'm watching the episode.
But yeah, no, it really, honestly, it's come down to personnel. We're about to get into year by year kind of what we were doing that was successful. Where did we make the mistakes that have had snowball effects? But it came down to personnel and going into free agency and then draft, and where did we value stuff? Where do we, where decisions did we make to let players go, and who were their replacements that just became utter failures? And you look at this roster right now, and the best players on the team, even before the trade deadline, were all Redskins. Terry McLaurin, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Redskins. He hadn't brought, the only name that you could say that he brought in where you're like, oh yeah, that's a good player, was Cam Curl. And Cam Curl, we'll get into it, but he was hurt his final year. He didn't get to go to the combine and show his stuff in the Senior Bowl. So he slid back because of that. But it's like, so you've made in 4 years of drafting, you can claim one guy as an improvement, and we may not even re-sign Cam Curl, so you can't even call that now. So that's where it really comes down to is 4 years later, what have you done to improve this roster? You've improved the culture. You got rid of some of the bad apples that were in the building, including the baddest of all apples, the owner. But personnel is where it matters ultimately. And when you're in charge of personnel, that's what you're going to get rated on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we know he didn't have much, but he did bring in a number of guys in. And looking into that, Will, it at the end of the day, it's going to come back to you. If you are the guy that's bringing these guys in your image, if you will, and you're like something that you want, this is what you're going to do. It becomes an issue with either you're not bringing in the right guys or you're not doing it.
Right.
It's on you. So for the benefit of the doubt, let's look at some of the guys that he brought in. Like, look at in that 2020 year in free agency with the Logan Thomases, the Kendall Fuller, Robin Darby. Look at some of those guys. And I mean, how many of those guys are A, still here, but B, what kind of impact have they had for him?
Right. So that was a free agent year where we kind of we were not active players in the first couple of days. We let the market play out there, and then we started picking off these guys one by one in really team friendly contracts. Logan Thomas was a huge hit that they found there, and I think at the time they gave him like a 2-year deal, and it wasn't a lot of money, and then they had to extend him pretty quickly. Kendall Fuller was their big splash signing, bringing him back, and that excited everybody. To bring back that former Redskin. Kendall Fuller was a good player here. Darby was another guy who came in here just for 1 year on a prove it. He had gotten hurt at the end of his time with Philadelphia, struggled a little bit, and it was like, all right, well, we're going to give you a chance to start here. And he ended up having as you look back, a really solid season for us. They brought in some quality backups that were hits. J.D. McKissick, as a third down back. Wes Schweitzer became a pretty valuable signing for them, throughout the years as a spot starter. The other one is that we don't really talk about is Cornelius Lucas. He's still on the roster, and he's our swing tackle.
Right.
Every year, he's good for 4 to 6 starts a season, it seems like.
Yes.
So
yeah.
They made some really bargain signings that paid out, and it provided a lot of optimism of, hey, look at that free agency class we brought in. We didn't spend a lot of money, and they brought in players that would really fit this team. And so, that overall was a really good start for Ron.
Yeah. And you look through who he had. This was the draft that he came in on, right? He came in right before the draft.
It was.
That year.
It was. So on the draft year, this is the year we drafted Chase Young. It's a hard thing. Part of me, wants to say everyone, just assumed we should go get this guy. Now, I will say this. This is one thing you got to remember with Ron and kind of defend him. He was told by Dan Snyder, I want you to figure out something with this quarterback that we got. Because Dwayne Haskins was only in his second season. So did we really do our due diligence on Tua and Justin Herbert? My guess is going to be no. My guess is going to be that Ron was under the direction that Dwayne is his starter. Not to say he couldn't get a quarterback, but he's not to be drafting a quarterback at number 2. And so Chase was the obvious pick there. Antonio Gibson was a 3rd round selection. That was a big hit that year. He had a really productive season that we'll get into soon. And then it was, I will say this, James Smith-Williams was a great find in the 7th round. If you can get a spot starter, and he's still on the roster 4 years later, I'd say that's pretty good. Kaliki Hudson has been a solid special teams player, so that wasn't a bad find. And then Cam Curl was in the 7th round, and he's been a huge hit. They unleashed something. But they've had some misses there, AGG in the 4th round. Yep. We loved him. We love this guy. We were so fired up when they drafted him, and he couldn't run away from anybody. He couldn't get open from anybody. We drafted a center, Keith Ishmael, cut the following training camp. And then Sadiq Charles, and he, the thing with Sadiq was always if he can get healthy, if he can get his head right, he can be a good player. And he's still on the roster, but he really hasn't turned into much.
Yeah. Nate said, where do the other coaches stand on these picks? Well, it's Ron's decision, and especially when Dan was in there, Dan and Ron were one-on-one. It's not, the other coaches hope that maybe they're in there, they can say, hey, this is the type of guy I want. But at the end of the day, it's Ron.
Well, it was his. The interesting part about this was our first season where Ron allowed for Kyle Smith to run the personnel in the draft, and we had some hits here, especially with free agency. And we got some guys that are still on this roster today. I mean, Antonio Gibson, Sadiq Charles, Kaliki Hudson, Cam Curl, James Smith-Williams, and 3 of your late round picks are still on the roster. So it was kind of a successful draft. And up until we traded Chase Young, everyone was always like, oh, well, that was it. That's a good pick. You got your franchise. So that's what's sort of interesting, because we'll get to in the next year kind of what happens with that dynamic. So he's off to a good start.
Yeah. And I also think we have to ask the question, since we're going to get into that, since we are talking about Ron Rivera and obviously Chase Young being that first pick that we could say he made, or they were gifted because he was, the best athlete in the thing, in all the draft. But you also basically look, who was that on that Chase Young didn't live up to expectations? Obviously the injury, the first year was nice. It was good. I mean, if you statistically, it was not over. It was normal. With 2020 and how everything played out. But then seeing how things have progressed, and after the injury, and then now he's been traded away, it makes you think: was that on Ron? Is this something that's like a black mark on Ron's thing, or was the injury and that was just Chase? That was all him.
Right. Well, it's really hard. I don't know if you can necessarily even say 50-50 on this. That's a great question here for Nathan. Honestly, actually, I'll answer that because it goes with it. I don't think, even if you look back, I don't fault them for drafting Chase Young. Of course, the easy thing to say right now is Justin Herbert should have been the pick in the number 2 pick. He's probably the next best player out of that draft. But Chase Young was a no-brainer, the talk of a no-brainer coming out, and a franchise setting, and you added him to the defensive line. like that. So I don't fault them for going in that direction. And Chase he was the defensive rookie of the year, so he came out with a bang, and played really well. He got hurt. That factored into things. There was, when they traded him, Baltimore had a second-round pick offered to Washington for a second and a fourth. And then somehow they got some medical information and Baltimore rescinded it. San Francisco was going to offer higher than the third-round compensation. And maybe if San Francisco was offering a second and a four, then when they got the medicals, they pulled out and said, we're only going to give you a third-round compensation. Baltimore was where they thought he was going to go. They got the medical information and they pulled out completely, said, we don't want anything to do with this guy. So there's injury, there's ramifications of that injury on Chase, but there also was a coaching issue. There's no doubt that they wanted to get rid of him. They wanted Chase out of this building. And you're still talking about a coaching staff that feels like they were going to turn this around. And so the fact that they wanted him out of there basically said that this guy to them was not coachable. You got to put some onus on the players. But then you also have to look and be like, my gosh, Ron, Jack, you were given this type of talent and you really couldn't harness it beyond just the 1 year?
Right.
You got to be looking at them too.
Yeah, and that's where I don't think that Ron can escape this. We can't put this all on Jack, because if Ron is the one who's overseeing it all, well, then Ron, you're missing this.
Yeah.
And then you go back to comments like what he made about Sam Howell, where it's like, wow, if I would have known he was this good, I would have started him last year. Well, how the heck did you not know that?
Right.
You see this guy in practice you didn't see this stuff. So, yeah. It's just it was a ridiculous comment, but it just lends to the fact that you sit there and look at him like you're not helping yourself.
No.
You put you like that. And then you have, like you said, these great talents who all the way up until the playoff game against Tampa Bay, all the way up until the comments when he messed with the great Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
He was the TJ Watt. He was that fearsome piece that everybody expected him to be. And I know I talk about the numbers and the 7.5 sacks and how it wasn't great, but you and I have talked about the impact that he had, the fear that he put on opposing offenses was just, you could not measure it. After that game, and then obviously losing, and then obviously the injury, he just has not been the same. But at the same time, we've heard this multiple times. Alex has said it. Ab has said it. If you just line him up right here and have him run up the field, obviously people are going to know how to do it. If you're not moving him around, if you're not helping him out, that goes to the coaching, and that's on Jack and ultimately on Ron Rivera.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a huge combination of everyone is responsible for his failure here, and including the player. I mean, there is, the fact that they got so sick of him ignoring the scheme and just trying to freelance and do what he wants to do. And we saw multiple times where he would run to the outside and the running back or the quarterback would run inside as to where Chase goes wide. And so they go right inside where he was. Mm-hmm. He would create that lane that would allow people to, the quarterback to escape, and how furious that, we would get watching and seeing this happen. So it was a collective, failure ultimately. But that 2020 season, I mean, that was a really tough season. First off, Ron gets diagnosed with cancer. Okay. So we had to have, we cut Adrian Peterson at the end of training camp. Shocks everybody that we're willing to cut this guy like that. And we're all furious about it. Alex Smith is begging, forcing his way onto the team, saying, I can play. I'll be fine. Do not let me sit, do not cut me. Do not put me on IR, And then we had to use him. We had 3 different quarterbacks that we had 4 different quarterbacks. You started off with Dwayne Haskins and the, just the up and down roller coaster that he was as a player. And then we had the off-season stuff that happened with him. Eventually, Ron kind of moved on from him as a player, and then he moved on from him and cut him after, just some of the shenanigans and immaturity. Kyle Allen was playing, and we had some wins there, but he got hurt twice, and the second time he was out for the season, which forced Alex Smith to come in, and Alex won games but it was ugly.
It
was so ugly. It was his worst statistical seasons. I think he had like 6 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions, and that's not Alex Smith's game.
No,
he's not he was never the guy that you would be worried about turnovers with.
Not to mention, you were always sitting there holding your breath, like, "Oh my God, don't fall!" And you remember, like I think it was the second game came in. It was against the Rams, and Aaron Donald rushes through, breaks through, jumps on his back, and I never forget just thinking, "Oh my God, that leg is just going to shatter. It's going to." Somehow he got through it. We got stomped in that game, but still, he always had you on your pins and pins and needles, but at the same time, you're like, where else can we go right now?
And he was winning. Yeah. We had this huge comeback here. This was the typical Ron Rivera thing where you started 1-0, then you lose 5 in a row, then you come back and beat Dallas against Danucci, then you take a bye week, and then you go on another run. With Alex, and he was winning. We beat the 11-0 famous Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night, or the Tuesday night. I don't know, whatever the day it was, during that COVID. And that was a big win, and we put up some numbers. I mean, Terry had a big year. Logan had a big year. AG was like, "Oh, who's this? We got ourselves a running back in the 3rd round." Cam Sims emerged at the end of the season as Alex Smith's go-to guy, and we're like, we got this big time receiver who, a big body receiver who can haul in stuff. Then we lost to Tampa Bay, but everyone felt good about that loss. Yeah. You never felt better about a loss because we were like, man, this guy Heineke, he came in. This guy played.
Right. Your guy.
Yeah, we're like, look at this guy. He kept us competitive. Like, we got ourselves a roster. Let's go 2021. And we're coming in here so hyped going into 2021, and it's like, ooh, we really needed to pump those brakes.
Yep. And you know what? That's funny. That's the first time that I really I mean, I knew it, but we had been bad for so long, we didn't experience it. That was the first time I really kind of got that refresher memory of that. When you win the division, it's a double-edged sword because the next year you get top tier talent. I remember in a 3-week span, I think we had Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and then maybe did we play Tom again, or it was like Derek Carr?
We played Tom Brady. We beat Tom Brady, but yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But we had back to back, and it was just like, oh my goodness. Among a bunch of other things, obviously the injury to Montez Sweat with like the broken jaw, then Chase Young goes down on non-contact injury that happens, and you're just sitting here like, wait a minute. But I don't want to get too ahead, but November to remember,
it was there. It was there until COVID hit. But right before we get to 2020, there's one big thing I want to point out, because we're talking about Ron's decisions here and how do we get to this point. I think one of the biggest mistakes Ron made in his time as the head coach was when he was the Redskins head coach, and he had a chance to decide who was going to be his offensive coordinator. And we had Kevin O'Connell, the current head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, that was on staff and had just run a season with Dwayne Haskins. And once Jay Gruden got fired, Bill Callahan turned the offense over to Kevin O'Connell and said, "It's yours. Do what you need to do with it." And he was viewed as a very young, smart, upcoming mind. He's a former quarterback. He's considered a bright, play designer, schemer. And we had this guy in-house. And Ron didn't just say, "I've heard of you. Let me go ahead and let you stay on some continuity," especially if your goal was to find out what we had in Dwayne Haskins. Why would you not look to keep his offensive coordinator, who he had looked halfway decent with? Instead, he made Kevin interview along with Scott Turner to interview for the job. And ultimately, I think Kevin got pretty turned off by that. And he also knew that he would have opportunities elsewhere. And Kevin kind of, after interviewing, said, "You know what? I'm going to leave. I'm going to go elsewhere. I'll find some other place to go." He went to the LA Rams under Sean McVay. A couple years later, he's a head coach. A couple years later, we fired Scott Turner. And it's like, I think you know how I feel about Dwayne Haskins, but I think keeping Kevin O'Connell could have put him in a much better position for success than what we did. And it's just kind of showing a start of some of Ron's mistakes that had a trickle down effect, and really kind of not understanding who Kevin O'Connell was to give this guy a shot, but sort of say, well, tell me who you are and I'll see if I'm willing to keep you on board.
Yeah, we saw what he was able to do, and especially, like you say, with the late Dwayne Haskins, and actually it made him look good. We won not that many, but we won. We had a couple.
He beat Detroit. He beat Detroit.
Yeah, right.
Because he missed the selfie.
Right.
He's taking selfies and forgot to kneel down the game.
Was that game, man? Oh my goodness. Oh, but you like to see that, man. I'm sorry. I just flash back to that game because we were on the opposite side when we took the selfie, and I remember sitting there thinking, like, what is he doing? And I'm looking because we were at that particular point. I went with Kat and a number of family members. I think about 8 family members because we were very bad. So the tickets were $7 to sit down in section 100, like 50-yard line.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, wow. Oh, this is great. But you could see it on the field. Like he was very, interactive. Going back to Ron, I just think that is a credit to him when you think about kind of some of the things you had to deal with in this. But look, Washington, that in the 2010s, in the 2010s, we have been kind of the giver of the NFL's next best coach. We've given up number of coaches that are doing very well. You talked about McVay, obviously McDaniel, LaFleur, right here, O'Connell. It's just Shanahan.
Mm-hmm. They were all in the building. All
of them.
And they also all had losing records, but they were all in the building.
And then but it goes back to that whole thing with Ron. I know Ron didn't have, he didn't deal with a couple of these other guys, but at least in this with O'Connell, why did you not? And I don't know, maybe you're trying to say, this is my mark, I'm going to make them interview for it. But if you see what he's done, and this is when things were not looking bad, he was the only thing that there was O'Connell kind of gave you a little hope, like, okay, we can work with this. And we see, obviously, hindsight's 2020 because we've seen how well he's succeeded since then. Yep. But it just makes you wonder, going back to the whole thing about with Sam Howell, and does he have good eyes on in-house? Does he have the ability to really kind of decipher, okay, this guy is good, let me work with this guy? Or is it just what's going on? He doesn't know. Yeah.
Is he not just a talent? Is he a good talent evaluator?
Right.
Yep. All right, so let's go into 2021 because there's a lot of optimism going into that offseason. But it also started off with some concerns, all right? We let the guy who built the team the year before, the team that went from last place to first place, we let him go. Kyle Smith is told that he can go seek other opportunities. We bring in Martin Mayhew to be the general manager. We bring in Marty Herney to be a vice president, consultant, player personnel, whatever his title is. And, and it's people that Ron is familiar with, but still knowing that Ron's going to, make the final decisions. And you can start to see where this is the start of some not so great decisions. It's not the worst, but Carolina, it is a little bit of a start. Yeah. And you really got to start to wonder, like, as we start to say, well, where did things fall apart? Like, was the hiring of these personnel guys the start of it? Because we had some bad decisions. So the very first thing, let's go into free agency. The year before we talked about all the success with bargain shopping. This was the year we went out and spent some money. On the very first day, we went out and signed Ryan Fitzpatrick in the evening to a 1-year deal, $10 million, which at the time, was kind of a lot for a 1-year deal for a quarterback. We brought in Curtis Samuel a couple days later. And, we were all excited, partly because the year before in the game against Carolina, Curtis Samuel torched us when Carolina came to DC and beat us. And so we were like, we know this guy's good. We couldn't stop him on all these short routes and handoffs, and now he's on our team. And then we signed William Jackson, and I will to this day say I was so excited about William Jackson. He was a guy I wanted in the draft, and I really thought he was going to be a great pick. Go ahead.
Let me address this first and foremost. I don't want you to get too far off this because I am man enough to realize when I was absolutely wrong. Going back to that first pick that you talked about, the $10 million that went to the thief, that is Mr. Fitztragic. I came on here.
Yes.
It was all on his quarter. And
yes.
I hoisted this man up. I sat there. I was growing the beard out. I was doing it all. I was wrong. Very wrong. This man knew he was hurt, got technically hurt in the first game of the year, didn't even last a half, and then proceeded to sit out, collect his check the whole year, and then not even in the end of the season, man was in Buffalo with his shirt off with his son, cheering on the Bills in the snow. Yeah. All right, I was wrong. I just want to let all y'all know that. I just want to put that out there. Forget him, because that I really was excited about what he could have done. But it goes back to the same thing you said about Samuel. We saw him the year before when he's sitting here chucking the ball and somebody has pulled his face mask and he's not even seeing it. We've seen what he was able to do in Tampa all those years. And so I wanted a little bit of that. I wanted a little bit of that magic to see, but it wasn't to be. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And I think, I don't necessarily believe that rumor that he got hurt at the water park. I feel like he got his hip crushed because he's never played again. So that's what I'm going to take to my grave here when I think about that season. So I don't fault you too much for being excited for him. You are correct. Celebrating.
Excited? I was a little more excited.
You were kind of obsessed. You were. I will give you this though. I mean, celebrating at another team's game, even if you know your career's over, is a little bit. That was a poor decision for him.
I was
poor
mad.
Decision. Yeah. But I will say also in this free agency, they did go the bargain hunting route, and they were successful for a second year in a row, and that excited everybody. They signed DeAndre Carter to a 1-year deal. He made some big plays for us with some kick returns. They signed Charles Leno when he got cut after the draft in May from the Bears, and he's still there today. And for his first couple of years, he was a solid left tackle. We made a trade for Eric Williams. The Dolphins gave him to us for give us a 6th round or 7th round pick and you can have him back. And Eric Williams, Eric Flowers, when he was here, was a good player. So we went, Bobby McCain was brought in May and he contributed. So we were doing some good bargain huntings. The draft is where we made some mistakes looking back. All right.
Oh my God.
Very first thing we did in the first round is we picked Jamin Davis. Okay. And if Jamin Davis is not a first-round pick, I don't think we would necessarily be blasting him and being frustrated with this guy the way it was. But I want to speak up for the player a little bit. Nathan, are you paying attention? I'm going to speak up for a player. Now, listen right here. We drafted – everyone was excited about Jamin because you were like, Ron Rivera drafted a linebacker. Jack Del Rio drafted a linebacker.
Time out. If we can go back, if we can rewind to that draft, there was somebody that was shouting the praises of one Zaven Collins, and
yes,
and that didn't come. It wasn't until Jack came on the show and said, "We're gonna go Jamin Davis." I have a feeling I think that's where they're gonna go. But I wanted Zaven Collins. We've seen what Zaven has done since then. I think he actually had a good game against us at the beginning.
He had an interception, I think, against us. Yeah. You are correct.
That's my 2 cents.
But so I am going to say this about Jamin to back up the player. We got excited because of who was drafting him, and we thought this guy was going to be the next Luke Kuechly. However, this guy had only played 1 good year of college ball. And we were forcing him to go be the Mike linebacker, to do all this stuff. And to this day, Ron just said it this week, because Jamin just hurt his shoulder and he's out for the season. And he said, it's really disappointing. He was really coming on as our weak side linebacker, outside linebacker, Sean. Yeah. So they drafted this guy to do something that he had never done before, that he was still learning how to play linebacker, play football, and they put too much on this kid. So I think we also need to recognize, again, the fact of talent evaluation and what these coaches are doing from Chase to Jamin, where if he wasn't a first-round pick, we would not be scrutinizing this guy so much. But I also want to say Christian Darrisaw was available. We could have gotten a left tackle that could have, solidified that. We could have moved, maybe Charles Leno over to right tackle, and we chose to go linebacker. Now, it's hard to say in the draft later on, but the other guy we kept talking about, is it Jamin? Is it JOK? Is it Jamin? Is it JOK? Well, when we went to go pick in the second round, guess what? He was still there. JOK could have been had in the second round. Would we have known that? I mean, he slid. That surprised everybody. But, it's another thing where, now JOK was not going to come in and be a middle linebacker, but, there again, it's about questioning the talent. So Sam Cosmi was our second round pick. He seems to be making a really good transition to guard, but that was also known in the draft. They said, this guy's a tackle. He could be a guard. Maybe with his athleticism, he's better fit to be a guard. We drafted him. We started him at right tackle. He had some injury issues. It wasn't a bad pick. But, you look later on and Nick Bolton was available at linebacker. Okay. What if we had gone Darrisaw and Nick Bolton? Look at that draft. Look how you're hitting a home run.
Come on, man.
Pat Freiermuth was available, which I loved. And, I mean, could you imagine, him with Logan, or when Logan gets hurt, how he could have stepped up and been a more solid player? Now, I will give them this. The next pick was Benjamin St. Juste. I can't stand the guy today, but I think at the time and through his first couple of years for a third-round pick, he showed a lot of promise. He's got, attributes. He's got length, size, so I think they were on the money there. Then we got the one that we all hyped about.
All right.
And you got to give him some praise here, because analysts praised us for drafting De'Ami Brown in the third round. That was seen as a huge pick by Washington. But I just also want to let you know, Amon-Ra St. Brown was there.
Oh, yes. And it's funny, when we played the Lions, in the little interview, Amon-Ra was like, yeah, man, I look at guys that were drafted ahead of me. Like, I look over at De'Ami Brown, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm just sitting here like, you're right. What is he doing, Amon-Ra? I mean, come on, man. But that's absolutely right. And when you look at that one, next to the Benjamin St. Juste one, at least with St. Juste, he was the training camp All-American. This guy, every training camp, every mini camp, he was the guy like, oh, he deflected this pass. He shut down Terry. He did this. He did that. But like you said, it's he's been getting exposed as of late. And so, but again, he's still there.
Yeah.
Still playing. And De'Ami, I'm not even gonna do it. I'm not even gonna do it because he can't do it with I'm not gonna do it. Just keep moving.
It's rough. It's sad that it's happening. So the rest of the draft, there's been some hits there. John Bates, I'm not gonna call him a hit, but he's not a flop. Derek Forrest had a really good sophomore season. We traded up for a long snapper who for 2 years was doing well. I don't know what the heck has happened to Cam Cheese this year, but and then the rest of it, there's just filler, William Bradley King, Shaka Toney, and Dax Mill. So that's not a very good draft. Yeah. There's a couple decent pieces there, Cosme, St. Juste and stuff. Bates a little bit, but it's also like there were other opportunities to really hit.
Right.
And we didn't.
Right.
And the thing that really surprised me about this draft is one thing that you learned from Carolina with Marty Hurney. He doesn't have first through seventh round making really good selections, but he's usually was always right in the first round. Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis. You're talking about Shaq Thompson. I think Thomas Davis might have been before his time, but they were always getting solid first round picks that like you don't miss on it. Whereas right now you could make the argument that we missed on Jamin Davis. And it's like those are the mistakes you can't have when you are a franchise that's struggling and needing to build.
Right, and that's the thing that it gets frustrating because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, maybe Jamin wasn't the best guy available, but maybe he's going to fit your scheme. He's going to fit what it is you want to do, and he's that perfect fit. Kind of similar to Emmanuel Forbes. You know what I mean? We kind of had a bend but don't break defense. Our secondary was working well towards the end of last year with communication. So you want somebody that's going to be able to create turnovers. So he's that fit. But I think the problem with Jamin Davis was, I mean, it looked like he was in there like with a deer with his head, with a deer with the headlights. You know what I mean? Like he just was couldn't seem to get it. You always talk about it that we wanted him to get to that place where he was reacting as opposed to, analyzing, breaking it down, this, do that, da, da, da. And he's shown signs, not the meteoric rise that our buddy said one day he might have. But I mean, it honestly, going to that, it really makes you look and see, like it goes back to, if it's not going to fit your scheme, what are you seeing? Why are you getting somebody like this? And you can't help but ask that question again this year. And I'm not getting ahead of it, but we have the same thing that happens where we get a position of need, but he's not the best available in said position.
Right.
It's like, how are you evaluating this stuff?
Exactly. And that right there, Sean, is where the next year we got ourselves into trouble with. So we're going to get to that, but that is exactly what it is, to where it's you have to question the talent evaluation and picking the right guys. Yeah. Now, from a coaching standpoint, from the season standpoint of 2021, it was the typical Ron Rivera thing. We lost 4 in a row. We won 4 in a row. We lost 4 in a row. After that, it was this up and down roller coaster. But we started to get excited for the end of the season. Thanksgiving, we did have at the beginning of the season the Chase and Montez sack record, and that kind of fell apart. Chase was hurt for the season. But then we got COVID hit us. And this is where we played Dallas. We were down at FedEx. We were down 24-0. Then we roared back in the fourth quarter and made that a game and lost it. But at that point, I think we were 6-6 going into that game. So then you lost it. But then this is where the wheels just fell off the bus. Now, remember, this is also when we had to play our last 5 games of the season were against the NFC East.
Dallas,
I mean, come on.
Eagles, there.
Yeah. I mean, it was ridiculous. And this is also when we had, with COVID, we had a situation where they had to move the Eagles game to a Tuesday because we didn't have any quarterback that could play. We signed a Garrett Gilbert off the street and had to start him. So you go into the Tuesday night game without a chance in the world to win that game. So there's a loss. Then you go up and you go back to Dallas on a Sunday night game. And as you're going through player introductions, there's a pause and there's no words. And they put up this silhouette of a player named Milo Eifler. No name, no nothing, just the silhouette of a player. Like, what is that telling you right there about where we were at in the depth chart, being ravaged by COVID? There's not even enough time to have this guy take a doggone picture to put him up for a broadcast on Sunday night.
Yeah, and that wasn't even the most exciting thing that happened that night. That was the infamous fight between D tackles, Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, fisticuffs on the sidelines, where we got just absolutely blown out. And let me say this, Janae, I will never allow you to claim credit for that game because we could barely field a team. And y'all ran up the daggone score, much like y'all did this last game. So get out of here with that nonsense.
Totally. So I mean, 2021 ended with a huge limp, but you're like, we understood why. And we couldn't wait for that next season to come around to say how we're going to fix this team as well, because it was like, we understood why we went from 6-6 to, that we won one more game that year,
It was rough, but definitely going into the offseason, there was excitement there. Now, obviously, you go into the 2022 season, the first thing that happens even before or around free agency to 22, the name gets changed. We are the Commanders. We all kind of had our little show.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Dude, I'm going to send you a picture of these notes, man. This is the last 4 years culminating into an episode, man. So yeah, we get in to that offseason. Obviously, the name change. A lot of speculation about Dan being fired, but are finally getting ousted, but it did not happen. But still, there was a number of things that happened. I think that was the year 2022 is when Sheriff, we let him go because we franchise tagged him the year before. Yeah. And that's where we went and tried to let go of our I'll say Mercedes and pick up two
jalopies.
Honda, yeah, I'm about to say Pintos, Honda hatchbacks, like broken down. Like, come on, man.
One of those where you got one of those cars where the side of it is all gray and then the hood is brown. It's patchwork together.
Yeah, that's what we had. And actually, and look, we both definitely trotted these guys out there like, oh, look at our moves. Look at Washington did. And we were frugal. Whoa. No, we got what we paid for. The injuries and the poor play between the two of these guys. Look, we had some positives, but then you also have to bring in another guy that I didn't get as excited about, but got somewhat excited about.
But one of our listeners got really excited about.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Pro Bowl. We're talking like 40 touchdowns.
4,500 yards.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. Ab, you love this guy.
Yeah. And look, we all touted the guy's praises coming from the Colts. Was 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The rap on him was always he plays hero ball. Sometimes he sees ghosts in the pocket, and he does too much. He does too much at times, and eventually we would see that. But actually, let's be honest. In training camp, we saw that. And we talked about it and actually got backlash from a number of Washington fans, on social media and all this saying, Wentz is this, Wentz is that. And then we got a Colts fan that said, yeah, no, you guys are right. What you see is what you get. And that's where we were. But talk to us. 2022 started off with a bang of sorts.
Yeah.
But there was also some interesting stuff.
Absolutely. No, I mean, the greatest excitement ever of changing the name, of finally getting rid of being the football team, nobody being happy about being the Commanders, and then you go ahead and make a trade for Carson Wentz where you send, a second round pick, for this guy that, people are like, did you really need to give a second round pick for Carson? It screamed desperation. Yeah. And honestly, Sean, this is where everything went wrong for Ron. And it comes from a personal standpoint, between free agency and the draft. 2021 had the warning signs were there, and it fell apart in 2022, which is translated into more trouble in 2023. And you hit it. The fact that we brought in Carson Wentz. Okay, so they went after Russell Wilson. They kicked the tires. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be available? We got a chance here. That wasn't going to happen. So they went with someone they knew they could bring in by trading. All right. I guess you could give them credit for saying.
Wait, let's look at those options. After we realized that Russell and Aaron Rodgers were gone, the next group was Mitchell Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz. So, nobody should be reaching for any of those three guys. Although they're all except for Wentz. Well, Mariota's not either, but they all had jobs at that year. But
they did. But the difference between those two and Wentz was they went to free agency, and the concern in Washington was, what are we going to do to convince someone to come here? So we went out and made a trade. Going after Carson Wentz, giving up more than he needed to. But we on this show were like, we've got ourselves a quarterback. We got ourselves someone who can make plays. I mean, he just went 27-7. We would take 25-12 and be happy with that, So we figured, he can't be bad. Even if he just does what he does in Indy, we got to be good. So that was a mistake. Then the fact that this was, I think, Ron's biggest mistake is what he's done in Washington is with the offensive line. He inherited Trent Williams. Yeah. I don't remember the left tackle.
Morgan Moses.
Well, so I'm going to go left to right. So it was Trent Williams at left tackle. I don't remember who the left guard was. Chase Roulier, Brandon Sheriff, Morgan Moses.
Yeah.
One by one, they all left. Okay. Trent Williams, he didn't even really go after trying to repair that relationship. He just said, you're out of here. He was kind of trying to send a message, but this is a new regime, taking over. And so there goes that one. All right. Then we got rid of Morgan Moses. He was like, he's a good player, but he's not a great player. We don't need to pay for this. Well, Morgan Moses hasn't been missing games up in Baltimore either.
Yeah.
So no, he was a solid player. He's always been just a solid player. Now we all talked about this for 2 seasons, the amount of money that Brandon Sheriff was getting, the $14 million 1 year. Then he was up to $16 million. And what's it going to take to franchise? But the decision that we made to let him go and sign the not just retreads, but dudes who were cut by their teams because their team said, you're done. Your career's over. And Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner was a huge botch. And then you also go look now that Brandon Sheriff has played in 2 full seasons. He hasn't gotten hurt. He's making the playoffs 2 years in a row. He goes to Jacksonville, and we're like, he had to go sign with Jacksonville. So what market was really out there for him? Boy, did he make a good decision.
Right.
But it's like it was the problem is it's not just the fact that we let a Pro Bowl right guard out. Mm-hmm. We weren't having the foresight to replace them with quality.
Yes.
We let quality go out the building and replace with cheap. We even did that. We went from, Trent Williams to Charles Leno was cheap. The year after we brought him in. We had someone else that season for left tackle before we got Charles Leno. I can't remember who it was, but he was cheap. We kept letting talent leave and we replaced with cheap. And we still did it again this year on the offensive line. And ultimately, it's destroyed us.
Yeah, it has. And to your point, you're mentioning, you were alluding to getting Wiley. And it goes back to the last several years. You look at some of those picks that we made that were just like, why are we got them on the first day or very early into free agency. Most of the time, those are the ones that are kind of like, hey, look at me. Like, here, I'll play for you. Like, more desperate than any other. Wiley, we got him right away. And I was the first one to say, oh, man, this is good. Hey, EB's over here, bringing one of his guys with him. He knows the system. He can help teach our guys. That no, it just has not transitioned. He has not transitioned well over here, and we talked about how many issues he had. Pringle, he has played a little bit better as of late, I guess you can say, but still, I mean, that line to your point is the part where
cheap hasn't worked.
No, not at all. And it's frustrating because it's like we were talking about, well, do we want to pay Sheriff top dollar? Do we want to? But the teams that are winning do that. They pay top dollar for the positions that are necessary. Jacksonville's in the playoffs, like you said last year. So,
what do you talk about the difference between Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and Sam Howell? Your argument as to why we should keep Sam Howell. They all have offensive lines that helps
running
them.
Games. Yep.
That's one of your biggest arguments. So here's where things get not good for us either. Let's go into the draft, the 2022 draft. So it starts off with a trade. Jahan Dotson does have a good year, so let's not blame that. But we traded back. We skipped on Jamison Williams. We skipped on Chris Olave that were available. We skipped on Kyle Hamilton, was available. We traded back.
Oh, we're getting.
So we got Jahan Dotson. Surprised us all. I had no idea who he was. I was like,
I was mad the first day.
Yes, absolutely. Shout out to Ash and Sydney being like, this guy's good. What's your problem, Will? I was like, who is this runt that we just got?
Like, wait.
But now here's the start of the mistakes. And this is also where it comes back to we just weren't looking further ahead as to what we need to be doing. So we drafted a defensive tackle at Alabama named Fedarian Mathis with the idea that this guy is going to replace Deron Payne. when Payne leaves. But there's a couple things that were wrong about that. One, Deron Payne balls out and we keep him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But also we reached, you said it before about the draft. We reached for the player we thought we needed and didn't evaluate the talent.
Right.
Look at the guys that we could have gotten around that time that could be helping us right now. This is the one that pisses me off the most because he got selected right after that. Jaquan Brisker, the safety out of Penn State, who's in Chicago. Okay. Yeah. Philly drafted Cam Jurgens, who will eventually, when Kelsey decides to retire, will slide over, but he's slid over to left guard and he's starting for them. Abs guy, your guy, Troy Anderson. He hasn't done a whole lot in Atlanta, but this was a player that is available. How about a linebacker, Nick Bonito in Denver?
Denver, yeah.
You've got, I think, that Tampa Bay he was a tackle, he was a guard. We didn't know what he was. Luke Gadecki. Couldn't we use someone on the offensive line that could have helped us out?
Yes.
And then now here, let's look at two guys we could have gone instead of going Big Phil. That Ab would have been crazy over if you picked that in the second round. What about Chad Muma to be a linebacker? What about Nakobe Dean, who went in the third round? Okay?
Right.
What about Dylan Parham, who's starting for the Raiders? Again, talking about you went cheap and let Sheriff out the building, but you brought in two old vets. Where's the young guy to be ready to take over the year from now? They didn't do that. So the second round, and Phil's been hurt in his 2 years. What a botch of a second round pick.
Right.
Third round pick, Brian Robinson Jr. We can't hate on that. He turned into the starting running back. He could be a bell cow if we use him. He's been a good player, but we were told that we overdrafted him, that you didn't need to get him in the third round. You could have gotten a linebacker by the name of Leo Chenal, who's playing well for the Chiefs. So that was not good. Fourth round is where I think we really messed up by drafting Percy Butler. At the time, people were like, "Really? Fourth round pick for this guy? You drafted way higher than expected." Now I'm gonna send a name out that I'm still pissed off. Every time I see this guy make a catch, I get pissed off, and you know where I'm going with this. We could have drafted Jake Ferguson.
Yeah.
And you don't think that we could have used a Jake Ferguson on this roster right now?
Yeah,
Instead, we drafted GD Percy Butler. Look at some of the other players who are making impacts. Romeo Dobbs up in Green Bay. Zach Tom up in Green Bay were available at the time. Heck, you could have said we could have gotten Isaiah Likely and given him a chance to back up Logan Thomas and be that threat. Come
on. I was telling you about Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. I wanted. Oh my goodness.
And instead, 1 round later, we go pick up a Cole Turner, who's been nothing. And not only that, when I talk about us kind of overdrafted Brian Robinson, Tyler Algier was available in the 5th round when we picked Cole Turner. Tariq Woolen, the cornerback we loved up in Seattle because he's long and lengthy, he was available.
Yeah.
Dallas's Deron Bland was available, the corner with all the picks. Heck, we got John Ridgeway back from Dallas when they cut him. He was available at that time. But instead, we used a second-round pick on a defensive tackle to do the same thing, stuff the run. You could have got the dude from South Carolina, Enigbari. Not a big name, but he's playing. He's producing more than Cole Turner is. Right. What a botch of a 5th-round pick. Now, we did get Sam Howell in that draft prior to, we traded up and got Sam Howell, and certainly that, he's been that's a great deal when it comes to the 5th-round pick starting for you. So you got to give him some credit. But like you said, these guys didn't know what they had when they drafted Sam Howell.
Nope.
They just said, "Oh, well, we like him and he's still available, so we should go get him." Where was that when you had a chance to do that with Nakobe Dean earlier? Where was that type of thought process?
Right.
You did it in the 5th round because you wouldn't do it in the 3rd.
And see, that's the thing. And that's what did Jack come on here and say the other day? You might as well trade away, give away our 1st and 2nd round picks or 3rd round picks because we don't start the draft until later. Now, It didn't necessarily work with Braden Daniels this year, but however, Ricky Stromberg was solid. And some of those pieces later on have gotten a little playing time, like Davis and KJ Henry. At the same, at the same time, it does. God, it really makes you beg the question, like we've been saying, like what? how are you guys analyzing these players? What fit are you trying to put these guys in? Because it's not working. It's not working, especially early on in these picks. Now, with Big Phil, I'll say injury bug got him, and what maybe they wanted to happen technically worked, because I think we always thought that they were going to bring him in to move on from Deron Payne. It had adverse effect because Deron Payne got fired up, obviously playing for the money, and his spot might be taken. So he he played his butt off, and so it worked. But then you're looking at it, and it's like he's been here 2 years, and like the best ability is availability. He can't get on the field, and it gets to that point where you're sitting here saying, "All right, man, I get what you were trying to do, but you might need to cut your losses because." We got to figure it out.
It's terrible talent evaluation, because if Mathis and Ridgeway were right after each other when it came to talent of that defensive tackle. So I'm fumbling over my words worse than Joe Biden does. No. They were like 7th and 8th in the rankings here, and we've used a second round pick on someone like that, whereas Dallas waited to the 5th round pick on Ridgeway. And Ridgeway's outperformed Mathis in his career so far. And they both kind of do the same thing. They're big body guys that are there to occupy space. And we used a 2nd round pick on this.
Yeah. Yep.
That's where it's like, Ron, Martin, this is why. What that little song? This is why you suck.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look at the 2022 draft and say, this is where things fell apart. There's too many guys here that are not contributing. Your 2nd round pick, Mathis, isn't contributing. Your 4th round pick, Butler, gets beat too much in coverage plays and on run plays. Your 5th round pick in Cole Turner can't even get on the field. In 2 years, he cannot. He's a training camp wonder. He can't get on the field. I'll give him they made a real good selection with Chris Paul in the 7th round. That's exactly great value. It's an outstanding pick in the 7th round to have a spot starter. Absolutely what he's proven. That he's a very quality player in the 7th round. Kudos to them. But I'll get into a little bit later on why they're still had roster personnel issues by relying on a 7th round pick with a rookie quarterback in year 2. What before we move on to the season, anything else about the draft that you're thinking about?
It was very underwhelming. That was the year that obviously I was at New Orleans with Kat at Jazz Fest. So I know I talked to you. I remember I did see you when you went on to their show. North Sports Dynasty had a show. I actually went on to their show kind of right after the trade happened. I'm sitting here outside of a crawfish restaurant like, what? They traded? What's going on? And it was all nice to see. And in hindsight, Jahan, excellent pick. Glad we got him. But then, like you said, start looking down the line. And with the exception of my guy, Sam, you really look at some of those other picks and you're just kind of like, we got excited for him that day. Or maybe, maybe you're like, okay, well, let's look at the best of this. But really, I can think of the 2 picks. I can think of Sam and I can think of Jahan. And
Brian Robinson was a good pick. Let's not take that away. Yeah. But the idea is it was a reach to get him.
Right. And we've seen how tough he is. Unfortunately, we had to see with the incident that happened to him his first year. But still, with a good line, with ample time to run and better push, we've seen him push the pile by himself. So I think that is definitely a positive move and definitely a good pick. But the rest of it, again, it goes to the talent evaluation, and that falls on Rivera's head. And that's something that in these drafts, you have some of these picks that are great, but then you have some of these that are duds where it really begs the question, like, what are you thinking? Like, what are you trying to do here?
Right. Absolutely. So, going into the season, we had our typical roller coasters. You won the first game of the season with Carson Wentz. He had those bombs at the end of the game that just sent the place on fire. And, this is our quarterback. Actually, before I get into the season, I do want to point this out. I got to give Ab some credit because we talked about this, that when we reevaluated the draft, he was not happy with this draft. And he says, we're not picking quality guys. We're just picking guys because we think we need to fill the positions. So, Ab, you were 100% right as we look back on this. But going into the season, so we started off with some fireworks, winning, the first game as the Commanders, explosive offense, over 300 yards passing by Carson Wentz. This is why we brought him in. He throws the bombs. He's going to keep you in every game.
We did say that. We did say that.
Then we lost 4 straight games.
4.
Then we won 6 wins. Dad's taking a bow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Then we won 6 games. 6 wins in 7 games. So we're back at it. And this is where we get into the situation where we play the Giants. We have a bye.
Yeah.
Then we play the Giants again.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is where the team kind of started to fall apart. We came out flat. We have a problem with the Giants. So we tie them up in the Meadowlands. Everyone's like feeling shitty about it. Sorry. Yeah. We have a bye week to prepare for that same friggin' team. Yeah. What are we going to do different in this second game to surprise them? We come out flat.
Nothing.
We play terrible. We scrape and claw, and we get a touchdown to take the lead, and the refs took it away. Shut up, Kansas City. Your play was nothing compared to what happened to Terry McLaurin. So shut up, Kansas City.
Come on now.
Mahomes, shut up with your whining going on here. Go look at what happened to Terry if you're going to be pissed off about a team getting screwed. But regardless, we played so flat in that game and came out with nothing after having a whole bye week to prepare for these guys. Then Ron makes another one of the blunders of all blunders of bringing Carson back to play against Cleveland. Dude throws like 5 picks in the first half. We're out of it. Season ends. Then he finds out by losing, the season's over. And he botched it at the end. Botched the season.
Hold up. Don't just bypass that. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you did not miss that when he said he finds out after the loss that the season's over. This man literally is in a press conference, and the reporter was like, you're out the playoffs, and he was, what? We're out of the play. Right? Ron, I look, maybe.
Where's the clip? Where's Nathan's clip?
Right.
I can't defend that.
Right.
I can't defend that.
I mean, come on, Ron. And really, you know what? It makes us. I don't have that one, but I have this one. Really? Which I think was his exact response to me when he heard that. Like, are you kidding? Like, what? Why would you say something? And even in that situation, I tried to give Ron the benefit of the doubt and be like, okay, maybe you're just, playing with them, like, oh, really? And like, just being sarcastic. Maybe I'm trying to give you some kind of leeway on that because it doesn't make you look good at all. But then it also reflects on us. Like, this is your coach. This guy doesn't even know, he doesn't know about the talent, but now he don't even know when he's in or when he's out. And especially with, how many updates you and I get on the phone, like, oh, this team's on the bubble. This team is in the playoffs. They're in the hunt, yada, yada, yada. You can't tell me he didn't know. So for me, it was hard to believe it. But then when you start to really fathom with other things that he says, it's like, maybe the cancer and all that stuff, maybe took something, man. Because it's some of the things he says is just like, come on, Ron.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is where my belief in Ron, the coach, after this really started to decline. Because all season long, I defended Carson Wentz. I defended the plays, and I figured, hey, they must be seeing something that we don't, that they stick with him. And Taylor was not playing well. Heineke's games, it was the typical Heineke stuff. 3 picks get dropped. He rallies the team at the game, at the end of the game, and it makes it exciting. But it wasn't like we were playing well, even though we were winning games. And for the most part, we were just trying to run the ball and limit how many times we had the ball on offense because we were so worried about it. But so I just assumed if against San Francisco, they put in Carson, he starts slinging the ball, really, throwing well. They must have seen something in practice to say Carson is the best quarterback for us. Right. But the locker room didn't feel that way. Exactly. And that's when you have to question Ron as the coach to say, your locker room's telling you something and you're ignoring them. And then Carson went out and just laid and egg. And it looked so bad on Ron, and it cost us the season. And at that point, I think he lost the entire fan base in an ability to coach with that.
Yeah. And that game alone allowed one host to make a complete ass of himself to a good friend of his, one Nathan Snell, because I went after Carson Wentz and anybody who attempted to defend him and any of that. And to me, it was embarrassing, because adding some context to that game against the Browns, that was also the game that Deshaun Watson came back in. That's the one that he came in the one before that. Was it that one? Or was
I think it was his first start. I think, or something. I mean, he was very rusty and played well against us.
Right. But early, it didn't look good. He was looking like a player that hadn't played in 2 years, and we couldn't seem to get anything done. Our defense was looking, defense. It was bend but don't break, like we had it, but we could not get it done. And then to kind of just see how poorly he did, and we got to go back. The reason why we think they brought him in was because of the San Francisco game. San Francisco whooped us, and Taylor was looking awful. So they bring in Wentz. Wentz comes in and drives us down the field and scores. And then that's, kind of what we think is a motivation that you do want to bring him back. But then also, wasn't it having to do with something with the trade, or because then he had to play a certain amount of snaps or a certain amount of percentage?
Well, he had already not qualified for enough snaps. Okay. So we wouldn't have to give him another second-round pick. It was just a third-round pick we owed him this year.
Yeah. Yeah, Heineke's F-It, Terry's down there.
Remember that Colts game?
Yeah.
I mean, we played like crap against a really bad team, and it takes the throwing the ball up in the air and Terry out jumping somebody to save our season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at 3 or 4 of those games. The couple of years before with that 4-game run where you had Seattle, the Raiders, you had 3 or 4 teams where, to your point, Oh yeah, and in a little holding too.
No, in the Raiders game when Trayvon Moehrig dropped the interception to end the game.
Right. But to your point, even on those, like what we did, we ended those games with 8 minutes to go in the game because all we did was run the ball down the field. That's how we were able to beat Philly. We were able to keep them off the field, run the ball, short passes, get enough first downs, convert on third downs, which is something we can't seem to do. Always had that issue. But honestly, there was something that worked. And it just didn't seem like when they brought Carson Wentz into the game that they were really concerned with us being in a hunt or winning. And that's why I asked the question about what it has something to do with the draft pick or something, because there was no real reason why Carson should have come back in that game. In my opinion, he wasn't even the best. He wasn't one of the top 3. I thought Sam was better at that point.
I think you could have known that Sam was better. He hadn't taken a snap. Don't get me with this.
I always knew Sam was better from the minute he got on the team. Don't get it twisted, Will. All right?
No, you don't want to know what it is? This is Ron's ego coming in. Ron started Carson because he wanted to show everybody, I picked the right guy. Remember when after the Bears game and he played really bad and then broke his finger, and Ron said, everyone's ripping this guy and saying the owner made this. I made the decision to get this quarterback. This is my quarterback. And so that was Ron telling everybody, our offense stinks. I'm going to put in the guy that can do this. And you're all going to have to thank me for bringing this guy in. And look what happened. And he played awful against Cleveland. No, I think that's to what I'm saying. I think that's where it's like Ron wouldn't listen to his locker room to hear who do they want to play for. And instead, Ron was like, I'm going to pick the guy that I made all these trades for because I'm the personnel guy and I know what I'm doing. We're going to play him again and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And I bought it. I drank all of the Redskins Kool-Aid that week. Yep. All of that Kool-Aid. Absolutely.
Nice plug. I like that you –
It is. See, Trisha, this is why I got it. See, Trisha, that's why I paid $80 for this.
Right?
show promo.
Right. And look, after that game, obviously, and then the whole comment about are we in the playoffs? I mean, it kind of went downhill. We lost the remaining
Lost 3 straight.
Yeah, three
Yeah,
straight,
3
and
straight.
then went to the Cowboys game, and then where you have the famous Taylor Heineke going to the coach and saying, I really want this kid to have a shot, this Sam Howell, because Taylor knew, like I knew, that the future was here.
He wasn't going to get hurt. No, Taylor was not going to get hurt going into his free agent year. It had nothing to do with what he saw in practice.
Listen. Not only did
this
Sam
isn't Disney.
Okay, Sam beat a playoff caliber team, a team that would go to the divisional round of the playoffs. Sam proved that he is the man. That's all I need to say.
Oh my God.
That's all I gotta say.
All right. Should we move on to 2023?
Yes, please.
All right. So here's the 2 big things happening before we even talk about players that happened off the field in 2023. Well, the biggest one being the sale of the team, which brought a lot of hype. But before that, so he fired Scott Turner. The offense really wasn't working. He brought in Eric Bieniemy. They demoted Ken Zampese, got a new quarterbacks coach. The bigger issue here with bringing in Bieniemy was the firing of offensive line coach John Matsko. This is my opinion. But also, all these years, we had a running game. We wanted to see more out of Antonio Gibson. We weren't seeing him reach the levels we wanted to, but we had a running game. Right. And I kind of feel like our offensive line this year, while still awful, might have been better than 2022's. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe Norwell wasn't as bad. He was just, as some of the other guys. But we've had no running game in 2023. Go for it. You got something to say.
To your point about Matsko, I mean, one of the things that I always tout, and Ab, you know this in the comments, and Will, you can attest to this. One of the things I always tout is when we're looking at how many guys we're getting for team, I always want more O linemen. I always want as many O linemen as I can get because of the fact that we have had to deal with injuries. And when you look back to those years where, we might not have had the best guys, but he was able to play the musical chairs and fit those different guys in there to make it look a lot better than it appeared. I mean, there were times in there when Taylor Heineke had time to throw the ball. Yeah. You know what I mean? And he chose to throw it to double coverage to Terry McLaurin. But still, he had the time to do it. And it was one of those things that is it was very overlooked and underrated, because you look at it now and, we're on pace to have all these sacks, and you look at how terrible things are. And we never were in that conversation the last couple of years. Certainly not this deep into it. So it definitely makes you, wonder, like, ooh, wow, this was a move that has had effects that it's far greater reach.
Yeah, thank you, Ab.
That's right. Right. As a running back, I love my own line.
But it's just, we had something that worked, and they tinkered with it. And they made it, they really messed things up into 2023. It's been awful. The only reason we have a better yards per carry this season, but that's because the defenses get surprised that we ran the ball. Oh shoot, they just ran the ball. Right. I thought they were going to pass it. They usually pass it 55 times a game, and so we catch them by surprise. So let's go into free agency, because again, as I said, 2022 was the decline of the franchise in the personnel. This continued. So we start off with, we paid Daron Payne 4 years, $90 million. Now, actually, for Daron Payne's season this year, last year, the difference is sacks and finishing plays. But his pass rush this season is on pace with what he's been throughout his career. Daron Payne is not a pass rushing defensive tackle. He is more of that run stuffer. He's more of the guy who will make tackles, but he's not going to be your rush the quarterback every single play. He had a really good year. He had more success last year finishing plays, but to think about whether this is guy's going to continue to be a 10, 11 sack guy was not right. But he hasn't played terrible this year. But we decided to put another huge contract for 2 guys up the middle and that exposed what are we going to do with the two guys on the outside. Then you mentioned Andrew Wiley was brought in for dirt cheap. He signed the minute free agency started. He signed his name and said, I just made $25 million. Thank goodness. But that was also, there was hype because this is a guy that we thought Bieniemy had a hand in bringing in. This is someone that came from his team who's going to help him with his system. He's been a flop. We brought in Nick Gates to be our starting center from New York. He's been a huge flop. We brought in Cody Barton to replace your guy, Cole Holcomb, at linebacker. He's been injured, and he has not. If you look at teams and how they attack us, they go, all right, so there's Washington's linebacker. We're going to run a drag route right behind him. Oh, we got him beat. There it is. Now go run for another 20 yards. The only and then we paid $12 million for a backup quarterback who hasn't taken a snap. Well, actually, I heard he did take a snap at the end of the game last week, potentially.
Oh.
I didn't watch the game. I think I might have heard that Brissett came in and just handed the ball off. Now, that's the least of my concerns is signing Jacoby Brissett because we wanted a quality backup. But you can't look at any of these free agent signings from the outside, Wiley, Gates, and Barton, and say any of them were successful.
No.
At all.
No. I remember looking back at that time, and let's be honest, we still had the glow of Dan Snyder, eventually being out and being ousted and moving on and all that stuff. But, when you looked at a number of these moves, one of the things I remember Gates in his injury history. And it was like one of the things.
He broke his leg against Washington.
Right. And it was like one of the things that we were kind of looking at was like, Larson, Weiser, these guys are all getting hurt. We don't need to bring in more injury problems here. I talked about it earlier about Wiley. Yes, I was on board first because I thought, okay, he knows that, but it has not played out. And this year, especially the start of this year, and as we go into the 2023 season, we'll talk about is it just seems like with a lot of the fans, and I know you and I kind of get caught up in it too, is where it's like soon as Dan Snyder was out, we thought everything it's going to go from dark to light, just like that. We thought, we're automatically be a playoff team. We're going to be so much better. He's not in-house. But I know, at least for me, I failed to kind of really realize like that there is a lot more involved. And even though he's not there, the remnants of things that he has done and what, him allowing Rivera to bring X, Y, and Z in and just how things are, it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked, and it's continued this way. And it's almost to your point of we got to move on. We got to clean house. When you have a regime that even though the head is cut off, the regime has still been going a certain way and doing things a certain way, like financially and and the drafts and stuff like that. They're not all of a sudden going to change just because all of a sudden he's not here. No, they're still going to go with business as usual, and that's what it seemed a lot of the beginning of this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, we flopped huge in free agency. Then let's go to the draft. All right. Mm-hmm. So the very first pick we make was Emmanuel Forbes, where you had Christian Gonzalez available. You have Deion Banks that was available. And more importantly, you drafted a zone corner that likes to make plays, and you made him play man. And he's undersized, and he's scrawny, and you have him go play man against A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? Why? We had a defense that was bend but don't break that drove us nuts last year, but the reason we won those 6 games in 7 was because of our defense started playing better. They shipped William Jackson out of there, and people stopped doing the pointing game. That was happening. Kendall Fuller started making interceptions and turnovers against the Texans, against Dallas. They were bending, but not breaking out there. We didn't love it, but we were a lot better. This was a top 10 defense going into this year. Then we added talent to positions of need, and we changed the scheme.
Yep.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing out there by doing that?
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any
No.
sense. And the play on the field has shown, because we went from having a secondary that we can at least say, okay, they're not going to get beat too many times. They're going to keep things in front of them at least.
Right.
To the point now where it's just like we have Swiss cheese. I mean, I went back and tried to look just at the highlights of that Dolphins game. And you just see Tyreek, I think he was on Butler? Or no, not Butler. He was on the rookie, Quan Martin. And he just, it wasn't even a quick, it was a da-da, and he just ran right past him.
Yep.
And Quan couldn't even, he looked like, now I'll start running. And then he gets beat deep. And it's just like, that's what it's been like with our secondary this year. And albeit young, and to your point about the changes, but it's just so crazy to see how different it's been.
Well, Miami said it in Hard Knocks as they did something. They said, hey, listen, guys, if they give you man coverage, it's over. Yeah. And like Tua knew, and he even had the other guy on the they were running a wheel route with A-Chain against Jamin. And that's where the safety went. Tell me why our safety sees Tyreek on one side, A-Chain on the other, and says, I better go cover the running back. Like, are you kidding me? So, like, what are you doing here? So let's get into that second round pick, that Quan Martin. So you draft this guy because you say we had some injury issues at corner and at DB. Not wrong, okay? Yeah. But you draft this guy and you say he's going to be our nickel. Then you put him in at safety. Then you put him back to nickel. Then you put him at strong safety. Then you put him up at free safety. It's like you didn't give this rookie a chance to say, this is what you're going to do. Now go master it. They keep putting him all around because they say, well, he can do a lot of things. Well, do you need to make someone do a lot of things in their rookie year? Yeah. So like I think they botched that. But even more importantly with this, you went into the year where you were going to have often injured Sadiq Charles, battling 7th round pick Chris Paul to be your starting left guard. For a rookie quarterback, for a guy starting for the full season for the very first time in his life in Sam Howell, and at left guard, you're going to put a injured player who has never been available for many games and a 7th round pick. And you pick a defensive back where there is a guard out there that could have come in and potentially been plug and play in Cody Mock. And you've went with the defensive back. You have holes on your offensive line, and you decide to add a luxury pick in Quan Martin.
Don't remind me how we missed on my guy. There's only one guy that I was looking at, and obviously it's on the line. Cody Mock. Position flex was the nickname that we had given him because he can play each position on that line. But again, this goes back to the first pick that we had, because right after we get Forbes, Patriots get Gonzalez. This one, right after we get our 2nd round pick, they get Cody Mock. And it's to your point, man, we need this. We need the line. We need somebody that can not only could play line, but that is flexible and could play other positions. And it's just like you're you're working against us.
Right. Yep. It's awful. So our 3rd round pick is Ricky Stromberg. Obviously, you guys, know that this was my favorite pick of the draft and someone that I like. Now, but here's the thing about it. This is where this goes back to the 2022 failures in the draft. Ricky Stromberg was drafted with the idea that he was going to need to sit for a year and hit the weight rooms and get stronger to be able to play. That was known. So if you need somebody to play for you, or to be relied upon on the offensive line the way we do, or we had some questionable offensive line picks, you can't be drafting someone like this with the idea of basically saying you need to redshirt for us. Be ready in 2024 when you have a greater need right now. Those are fine to do when you're in a situation like Philly was, when they can draft a Cam Jurgens and say you're going to redshirt until Jason Kelce retires. But that's not our situation. So I love the pick of Stromberg. And Ron said when he got hurt, Stromberg's out for the season. He announced it this week. He said, I'm really disappointed because he was coming on. I really thought he could help us along the offensive line. But we needed more here. It was poor roster construction to bring in someone like Ricky Stromberg and allow him to sit when you have a need. Then it goes to the next guy, Braden Daniels.
Yeah.
Same type of player. Even worse, though, than Stromberg, it was like this guy needs at least a year to develop. Right. That's the stuff we need to be doing in 2022, not in 2023 when you have needs along the offensive line. Right. We made up that turf toe injury, whatever he's got, because he was so bad in training camp. It was like, we're going to have to cut this guy and get a whole bunch of junk from people for cutting a 4th-round pick. So the minute he kind of got hurt, they were like, injured reserve, out for the season. So they save face. And again, like I understand the philosophy, but that's what we wanted in 2021. That's what we wanted in 2022. That's an example where Chris Paul being picked in the 7th round and contributing in spot starts is a win. That's a great pick right there. But Scott, have you seen what you post? Millions of people find that offensive. But that type of forward thinking was needed years ago, not this year. So that's my big thing. As I found out the last couple picks, I mean, KJ Henry is, the best of the and Chris Rodriguez are the best of the picks. We'll see with Rodriguez. He's probably going to get some more playing time next year. Henry looks like a rotational piece.
Right.
But top to bottom, 7 picks, and the best you're coming out of there is a rotational piece.
Yeah.
Failure. Huge failure.
And as you've seen the last couple of years, kind of how it's progressed, and you just go back and look at this year. And I mean, you and I talked draft night, first round. Once Forbes got drafted, you loved it.
I did.
I was not on board just because of the size and X, Y, and Z. But in reality, in logic, it should have worked. It should have been fine if we hadn't switched things up. But then again, you look like you said, you look through those next picks, and it just didn't seem like we were trying to get better.
Right.
It just, you know what I mean? Like we were just picking to pick, it seemed like, in a sense, because we weren't trying to get, build a team. Because you go back to, getting Quan Martin, and we talk about Cody Mock, Steve Avila, it was available at that time.
No, we couldn't get Quan Martin. We wanted to get him. He got picked before Quan.
Oh, right before that, yeah. So, but I mean, still, but there was a number of other guys that were there, especially along that line, and it's just we talked about it over the last couple of years that it just does not seem like Washington values certain positions, linebacker being one, and it really doesn't seem like they put that much value in O-line as they just kind of mix and match and bring whatever in, and it showed this year during the season.
Right. Well, so here's something. If your goal was to move to man because you wanted to produce more interceptions, why didn't you draft the corner out of Penn State who excelled in man coverage? That was the whole thing where we kept saying during the draft, I love Joey Porter Jr., but, that's not our scheme. So let's just dismiss him because that's not our scheme.
Right.
Yet the whole time you were switching to a man scheme. Like, what are you doing? Or the fact that they said, they panicked with Quan Martin because they wanted Brian Branch. And the Lions picked him in the 2nd round, so they lost that versatile safety that they wanted. Well, maybe you should have gotten that versatile safety in the 1st round. Like you told him, you're drafting him if he's available.
Right.
If you value that much, maybe you should have done that.
So, all right, well, let's go down into the season. Obviously, we were starting to see some of these guys at training camp, and obviously you're hearing all these praises about the defense. Obviously Chase Young is back, and oh, look, he's got the energy, and everybody's excited. The fans are back there. These guys, this defense looks good. Oh, these corners, they're locking down Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. It always seems to look really good in June, July, and August, Will. And then we get to the season, and, we might have a first week like we did. Not to get too far ahead. We might have the first week where we beat the Cardinals and then come back and beat the Broncos. But still, you see the errors. You see the problems. And how is he feeding all this hype during the offseason, and then he can't translate?
I've heard from several journalists just say that corner is the hardest position to evaluate because there are no risks in training camp. Yep. So you get beat on a play in training camp, you got beat, and so they take risks, they gamble in training camp to be more aggressive, to make more plays. But then when you do that in the game, and if you miss it, your guy just ran 40 more yards for a touchdown.
Right.
And so they back off a little bit. They hesitate, and all it takes is that split second to where then now you're not getting there on time, and you're getting beat for a catch, and consistently moving the chains, and it's just so I think we were just given just a bunch of false goods in training camp and how good it was, and everyone was hyped with the new ownership and everything. There you go. Yes, I see that comment.
We did look good at practice, right?
It's the fact that it's practice. We're talking practice,
That's what, practice.
Right. But do you realize this could feel like so long ago? Do you realize at one point we had won 5 games in a row? We won 3 preseason games, including ending the Ravens' infamous preseason win streak. Then we win the first 2 games of the season. Everyone's flying high. We're 2-0. We're struggling, but we're 2-0, but we're putting up points, and so there's a lot to growth. Defense is going to figure this out, and we've gone 2-9 since then.
Yeah,
including a stretch of 1-5. And we've had, during that time, we've had some encouraging losses, like against Philly twice. But then we have had the lowest of lows of low games this season against the Bills, against the Bears, against the Giants, against Dallas, against Miami. It's like when we've lost, aside from Philly, when we've lost, we've gotten our ass kicked out there. We're getting whooped out there.
And it hasn't looked pretty, and to the caliber of opponent. And it made me, I say this to you midway through the season, Will, we've done a lot of research on this team, but have we misjudged these guys? Are they really just not that good? Because there were some teams that we were beating that you're like, oh, okay. But then you have the Philly games where we're in those. But, you talk about the teams that we lost to in the Bears and Giants. We made DeVito a great guy. We even shed light on Josh Dobbs in that first game. I mean, he about near beat us. But then you go back and you're just like, wait a minute. We can't be this bad. Even the Patriots game looked ugly. Now, Sam didn't help by throwing that interception right before the halftime. But still, we gave up, the longest touchdown run by Ramondre Stevenson of some 60-some-odd yards in his career. You know what I mean? This team that had looked absolutely awful looked decent against us. And we somehow survived that one. So, in reality, if you really look at it, we could be winless at this point, to be quite honest with you. Because if you look at the Cardinals game, we didn't look great. We went down 21-3 against Denver. We went up 24-10 against the Falcons, but we did everything in our power to give them that game. And then the Patriots game. So it just seems like the bottom fell out. Even when we're falling, maybe we might win, but it's not benefiting anything. What is happening?
It's like our coaches don't know what they're doing out there. There was, it's come out, that Jack Del Rio's defense, was just schematically was more confusing. The players were more confused out there. No matter, even as we struggled, he didn't dumb it down at all to make it easier on these defensive backs to figure out where they're switching, who's getting who, et cetera, like that. But then we also have an offense where, we're on this pace to lead the league in career in a year in sacks. So we start playing quick game and we start getting the ball out earlier. So we're not having to worry about that. And then we get away from that. And we change that scheme up, and we stop doing that stuff that's working. So it's like how, it's like the on all these sides, these coaches, it's like, what are you doing? On offense, we got poor balance. We've got an ineffective run game. We're throwing it 50 times a game. We have terrible pass protection, and we're not running routes that help them. We have lack of production for from our wide receivers, except for Curtis Samuel. Our star receivers are dropping passes out there. John Dotson's been good for a drop a game. Terry's dropped the ball, on first downs. On defense, we changed the entire scheme up away from what was working last year. What were these guys doing? Like, it's just a total mess. Like, did we overvalue the talent? Maybe, but part of me is like, I just want a clean slate because I want someone else to come in here and say, this is how I can utilize the personnel.
Yeah. And this is where if you're playing this season on a video game, this is where you calmly get up. Some people are calm. You get up and you press the reset button. You start that thing all over because it's like, no, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to, because this is ridiculous. This is Anton. What's up, Anton? He said, if we only had one game that we scored first, then we scored first. I'm thinking the Philly game.
I was thinking it was one of the Philly games.
Is that the only game we've scored first?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because
I know we
did we start first against New England? Seattle, we scored first, I think.
Yeah. I think
there's been a couple, but I mean, for the most, it's not often.
But maybe he's talking about opening drives, because I know we've only had one opening drive where we've driven down and scored like a touchdown or something like that. So, man, and even that's embarrassing. And to what you were saying about the drops, well, Terry would be lucky to have a drop if we can find him, if we can pass it to him. I mean, we can't seem to get him the ball at all, and that to me could be one of the biggest resonating factors of this, because if once Ron leaves, you just hope that Terry potentially sticks around and see the brighter day and everything, and that he's not a casualty of this, because he's a great receiver. Like we talked about how good he is. Is he a number one? Is he this? He's that. He's a great receiver, but even better locker room guy. And you just don't want him to be the residual damage of all the chaos that has gone on, because he deserves better.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and the thing is, ultimately 2023 was all about Sam Howell. We knew this going into the season. It was kind of figuring stuff out. And I think one thing you could look at about Sam Howell is if we can bring in a completely new scheme, it can be, okay, I've got a quarterback who, when given time, or if has the ability, I've got a running back, I've got two wide receivers that are on the roster for now. I can scheme this up and get these guys open. I can do something new and show this talent. But there's still, and Sam has been extremely encouraging this season by all means, but he's also been really inconsistent. And against some of the better teams, and especially lately, he's had some, he's had some bad games. And I think, we've got this next stretch where we still are playing good defenses in San Francisco and the Jets, and we get Dallas again, where Sam still has a lot to play for. It's like, what are we worried about these next couple games? It's really, Sam's got a ton to play for right now to be proving to somebody that he should be the guy next year. Because he's had positive moments and he's had encouraging moments, but then you also got to look at, well, when you have to play a good team, when you have to go play Buffalo's defense, when you have to go play Dallas's defense, when you have to go play Miami's defense, it's not a good picture. It's not, and so, but to win consistently in the league, to be a playoff team, you got to be able to handle those teams. And we're not. And whether that's on Sam, whether it's on the offense, whether it's a combination, that, we're going to get to see more of that, because when we play good teams, we don't play well at all.
No, we don't. And yeah, I mean, to your point, like, he has been one of the lone bright spots. And I can only imagine if we had one of these other quarterbacks, I mean, it just would have been a crapshoot, because there really was not a lot positive when you really break it down and think about some of the stuff that we've dealt with this year. But then, to your point, this coming up, these games, there's absolutely nothing to play for. We're not no reason for us to be uber motivated. I mean, unless we're playing spoiler, the only thing we're focused on is putting out good tape. But these are the games where the character matters. This is like the guy that you're getting beat 56-0, and he still runs the play down and stops the guy at the 1 yard line because he still has self. He has credit. Like, he's not going to sit here and just roll over and play dead. Yeah. I'm really looking at Sam to really make a statement in these games because he's already been talked about when we were decent, when we had a shot, when we were kind of in the season. And now that it is over, now that everybody's already written him off, let's see what he can do. We only scored 2 times last week, and it was both Sam and Howell running the ball in for a touchdown. So he's showing me that he's still playing. Certain people, the real footballers that watch, have said, there's a game where he can get it, he can get it done, albeit having, those issues. But you only hope that he just gets rewarded. And right. Whether that's in Washington or elsewhere, you hope he gets rewarded and gets the shot. And you look around the league this year, and you can't tell me to pull a quote from Cam Newton. You can't tell me there are 32 better guys that are better than this guy. Now, obviously I'll exclude the top, right. Top 5, top 10.
25. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, he's better than Rent, Spencer Rattler. That's what's better than. Let's go. What if we had in-house Drake May, Sam Howell, and Spencer Rattler fighting for the number 1 spot? That would be an embarrassment of quarterback riches. It'd be great. So divided on that. But so at the end of the day, that brings us to where we're at right now.
Yeah.
We know Rivera is out. Mm-hmm. Whether or not we liked, what he did for us, he had a daunting task when you really think about it. Come in here and help this organization save face. We know with Dan Snyder, all that stuff that Ron had to deal with from Dan Snyder, and then having the cancer and all of the different issues in that COVID year. I mean, it's remarkable to see that not only did he survive that, but he helped the team to get stronger. And, we got to the playoffs. But that season, and we look at it under a microscope now, because in reality, how long could we have sustained that?
Right.
If we would have taken that team and then put them on the schedule that they had the following year or this year, how successful would they really have been? Because let's remember, we won a couple games in the division on a very, very, very poor division. Mm-hmm. They say the Eagles that have just gone on to, go to the Super Bowl last year, or Dallas and the team that they have this year. So they were really bad teams that 2020 year. So it really makes you think. You're glad for him, and the culture has kind of been changing, and we're in the right direction, I believe. And it's just one of those things where you hate it that he might not be a part of seeing the glory that we hope we can get to in Washington. But I mean, I'm not trying to put this guy out the door already, but I will say, for me, thank you for what you have done in Washington, Ron, because honestly, you literally have been given just a bag of onions and some crap to deal with. Yeah. And you really been just very a stand-up guy, and just honestly somebody that you want your kids or young coaches or somebody to look up to. You know what I mean? With that being said, I think the game's passed by. So
absolutely. I mean, it's a situation. What he came to as, let's just start with the fact that he was hired as head coach of the Redskins, and he's leaving as a coach of the Commanders. And I'm glad that they haven't fired him, only for the sake of a dignity situation, because of the junk that he's been through while he's been here. But we've just spent 2 hours going through where the mistakes were, and it took 2 hours to. We could have talked more about the mistakes, because of the fact that it just hasn't worked. He was given a chance. He was given the opportunity to, be a coach-centric approach and get his hands on personnel. And ultimately, personnel is where he's made his failures. He's had a couple coaching blunders too, but personnel-wise is where he's made his ultimate failures, as to why we're in the situation where we're 4-9, and we just can't wait for January 8th so we can clean house and start fresh.
Yep. Wipe our hands with the whole situation. Yeah. So, hey, there it is. That is our Ron Rivera talk. We still good? You still got time?
I do. We got 2 more segments, 2 more quicker segments.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So we got to move on very quickly because, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a game. And you saw Scott Thaler was in the comments, Mr. St. Louis himself, even though his team's in LA. The Washington Commanders play the 6-7 LA Rams. I didn't realize that they were 6-7.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's even worse. They've snuck up and started playing well, and now they're playing for a playoff game.
Yeah.
We're screwed.
Yeah, right.
We're playing a motivated team.
Right. And I'm sitting here looking at it, and I'm, kind of looking through some of their stats and how they're doing. And, Cooper obviously hadn't played half the year, but, he always got 500 some odd yards. And I'm like, well, who's the leading receiver? Puka Nacua, who's balling out, has over 1,000 yards. Stafford has had a resurgence. And even their running game with Kyron Williams, he's been
800 yards.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, they're putting up, it's one of those things like you said where like I wouldn't have thought they were playing that well, and all of a sudden you look at their stats and it's like, whoa, Stafford's 19-9 with 3,000 yards. You got Nacua and Kupp. He's only played in 9 games, which it's only 4 less than Nacua, but he's got 500 yards receiving. Tutu Atwell's got over almost 500 yards receiving.
Yeah.
So it's like this offense can hum. This is not a good combo for us. The fact that the strength of their offense is their receivers, those 3 guys, they're going to test our secondary and linebackers
early and often. And
then we got the strength of their defenses right up front there, and Aaron Donald, and no one can really block this guy. And then they've got their leading tackler, former South Carolina standout Ernest Jones, who we should have picked in the 5th round. He's just a linebacker, nothing much. But I was like, But I was like, wow, I knew he was a good player here, but I was like, wow, he's leading the team with 118 tackles. Man, look at that. Yeah, it's not a good setup for it. The fact that they're playing for something, their weapons are at spots where we are very weak, and they have Aaron Donald. Not good. Not good.
Yeah. Not good at all. And then you look back at the last 4 games that they've played. You get a 1-point win against Seattle, a team that we lost to by end of the game field goal. They crush the Cardinals 37-14. Then they destroy the Browns, albeit not with their quarterback, but still a very good Browns defense, and put up 36 points on them. And then last week they go to overtime and just barely lose to the AFC leading Ravens. So you mean talk about a team that's motivated and it needs to play? Yeah, these guys are going to come out raring to go. And hey, for how they looked at the beginning of the year, for how since last year after they win their Super Bowl, team players and all of us pundits have written them off. All right, I like to see this, not against our team, but you do like to see kind of resurge, especially with Matthew Stafford and anything like that. So it's going to be interesting because, like you said, they do have a number of weapons, and you just hope that we just put a good product on the field. We don't come out completely flat because, Will, this of the 4 games we have remaining, this was the one that I felt somewhat confident about.
Right. We thought this was winnable. A couple of weeks ago, we thought, well, this might be winnable.
Right.
Yeah, it's not looking like that right now.
Yeah. Your team, Scott. Your team, man. Best team.
Yeah.
You're playing for something.
We don't want to have another Miami game.
Yeah. So that, we're hoping not. I see our running backs being helped a lot by the pass plays, hoping less than 8 holding calls. Let's hope for none.
Let's hope. I don't have my keys, but I've got my keys. I don't have my keys on me, but I've got keys to victory.
All right, let's rock on out. You know what the segment is, and we're going to still do it. Keys to victory, where we tell you a little something that we think will help Washington if they're able to do it to win the ball game. And we are in week 15. Will, what is your first key to victory?
My first key to victory is to mimic the game plan against the Atlanta Falcons. As much as it frustrated me And what we did there was to start the game, we worked quick game for Sam to build his confidence. We ran a lot of quick slants. We ran some wide receiver screens. We got the running backs involved in some screens because Sam needs to bounce back from some poor performances. Yep. And doing some things early to help him get into a rhythm might help him get back into a little bit more confidence passing the ball. He's, like you said, he's been a gamer, but he hasn't played well the last couple of weeks. And so I think this would be certainly help him out and then build in some of the longer drop back plays later. But start off with some quick game, build Sam up so he can, set him up for some success.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my first is actually start out the gates hot. I mean, you come out guns a-blazing. I think in order for us to win this thing, we're going to have to get out to an early lead. And I don't mean field goals. I mean 2 touchdowns. And for me, that means Sam getting, quick passes. Yeah, but first down, take a shot. Take a shot. We tried to do that in one of not the Miami one, but a couple weeks back, and it didn't work. But I felt like that was good to kind of let the defense know, okay, here we come. Now, we didn't continue to do that throughout the game, but the thought, let's take a shot. Let's see if we can connect on something deep and shock these guys quick to let them know that they're at least in a dogfight. Because if they don't feel that way, they have the potential to work us. That like you said, the wide receivers against our secondary does not look good. So yeah, get out early and strike early and often, man. 2 big touchdowns, something very early on.
Right. Let's get Ab and Anton to put in theirs too. Give us the key since you guys are listening. Scott's got a good point here. He said just do a bunch of blocks in the back on kick returns and punt returns, and that'll help you all out. He's not wrong. Not wrong.
Hey, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Right? Make him call it. Make him call it.
Right? Come on now. What's your second one?
My second one is going to be a return to 2022, Ron, and run your zone defense because we need to slow down this passing game. If you are letting them go up in man coverage, you darn well know Sean McVay is going to sit here and be like, all right, let me just pick these guys apart. Let me just run some patterns there and get these guys open, and we'll just dink and dunk. So let them be in front of you. I heard that Emmanuel Forbes actually came back to practice today. And so there's a really strong possibility that he's going to be back. So let this kid play in some zone coverage. Try and set this kid up for success because you got to figure out what you're going to do in the draft next year. You may need to be going to get a corner very early because we can't go into next season with Forbes and St. Juice as our starters. That's going to be problematic. So that's my thing is go back to the 2022 defense, find out what worked on that team, mimic that.
Mm-hmm. And I say my last one is go back to the 4-game win streak we had in, I think, 2021.
Okay.
Was it? Where we had Taylor Heineke, and we were really trying to help make sure that he didn't give the game away, so we consistently ran. Now, obviously, you talked about having that big Aaron Donald in the middle. So let's do what Missouri did to Georgia that almost got Missouri the victory this year. Stretch. Run the stretch play. Get it. If we're going to get in the shotgun, EB, this is what you're going to continue to do. All right, let him hit the edge, the off-tackle plays. Let him get out in space and run away from Aaron Donald so that if we need to trap him, he'll be ready to rush out there to kind of pursue, and we can kind of get underneath. So we have to stretch out that time of possession. We got to win that time of possession battle, and which means we're going to have to run the ball and kind of just keep them off the field. Now, obviously, I want to do that after we get a lead because I don't want to start with that because obviously if that don't work, then that gives them an opportunity. But if we can get an early lead, then let's run the ball and kind of start to bleed that clock.
Yep. Yeah, so that's some hopeful thinking right there, Sean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, this is also the same guy that said after last week, I just hope for inclement weather because there's no way.
And it was happening. Going into the game, it was raining before. It was really hazy in the morning. I was like, oh, my gosh, Sean's going to get what he wants.
It could happen. But it did not. It didn't happen. Yeah. So, look, we're almost done, but we do have to
post what Abs said. So this was Abs.
Okay. Let's see.
He wants to contain Stafford and pressure him often. Ron's going to have to get really creative to get some pass rush because no Two Hills, no Henrys, no James Smith-Williams. We get no pass rush right now.
Yeah.
It's you want to be Chase Young and Montez and laugh at us. Look at our pass rush since they left. As bad as they were. But yep, absolutely. Yeah. That would certainly do it, getting some pressure on Stafford and making him throw it. And then Anton is kind of following that. He wants to just ball out. Yeah. We will blitz on every down. Like, remember the Titans.
Yeah. Oh, I like it. Shotgun jam, head start away from Donald. Yep. And get the ball out of his hands.
Right. Yeah. Give him an extra second or two. Yep.
Yeah.
And let's see. Here we go.
They played well in the rain. Well, is it going to be raining this Sunday?
Can it rain in a dome?
Oh, yeah. I guess we're in the Rams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, we'll see. Look, we're going to our last part. We're going to give our score predictions. Definitely give your score predictions in the comments. Will, what do you think? Actually, you know what? I'm going to go first this time. I'm going to go first. And I honestly, I'm going to say 34-17 Rams. I think that offense takes off. And I think we score a couple late touchdowns. I think we score early with the field goal, but 34-17 Rams. I got the Rams winning it.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to say this. Sean McVay isn't going to want to embarrass his future team. So I think he's going to pump the brakes at about 25, and it's going to be 25-14.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I can see it. 38-21 Rams win. We get out to first 14. Don't score till the third. Yep. I can see that.
Yep.
I can see that. With your team's luck, the roof will leak. We're not at FedEx.
Only if it's sewage water.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, give us y'all score predictions. Scott, what do you think the score is going to be in the game? We got you guys winning right now. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, because Cheese is going to send some awful snapbacks that
dribblers.
That Tressway is going to make an amazing catch and put it down, and Sly's going to miss it.
Oh God. Well, all right, Scott. All right. Either way, if you meant to put that one in front, or if you didn't,
he did.
Yeah. I believe it. Look, ladies and gentlemen, like Will said, we've been on here for 2 hours, but it takes at least that long to talk about Ron's tenure and some of the things that's happened. And you know what? I'll say this, and rightfully so, that we do give him this amount of time, far more time than we gave Dan Snyder. But there is a level of respect for Ron because of his last 4 years. Yep. It hasn't been pretty, but he's given us reason to hope. Yep. So shout out to you, and I'm like you said, I'm glad they didn't fire him. Let's let him ride off in the pasture, man.
Absolutely.
So, all righty, ladies and gentlemen, it is 10:16. I got a missed call from Kat already, so you know what I'm looking forward to. Getting my couch ready, get my pillow and blanket. I'm good to go.
Okay. But go get a Twix bar on the way home.
Oh God, the fact that you know, man. Wait. It's Wine Wednesday. We know what kind of night tonight's going to be.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to let you go. For my guy, Will Kramer, it is your boy, Sean Spencer. And, hey, appreciate you guys being here. And we're going to go out the only way we know how, even though we're losing.
Kids, you got a good chance. Let me tell you something about some good fans. Back in the day, RFK was our palace. If you don't know, you need to ask about us. Think we're gonna lose.